Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are here today to talk about member intelligence. Before we go ahead and we get this session started, I just want to mention if anyone had attended our session last week where we walked through some of the value-added applications, we talked about MemberInsight and MetricsFirst there. Some of today's content is going to cross over because we are talking about MemberInsight and MetricsFirst as well today. So there are other sessions happening right now. So if you've already seen some of that content and you don't want to walk through those platforms at all again, then by all means, feel free to jump off and join one of those other sessions. But alternatively, we're really happy to have you today, and we're looking forward to getting started. So I am just going to go ahead and share my presentation screen here, and we can kick off and get started. So what to expect today, a little bit of housekeeping first off. So please use the chat box if you have any questions at all. It's just Mark and myself on the line today. So we will do our best to answer some questions in the actual chat if possible during the session. If not though, if we don't get to your questions during the broadcast, what we will do is we'll circle back around for a Q&A at the end of our session. So we will audibly take questions at that point from the chat. So throughout the session today, add your questions to the chat, and before we get off the line, we will make sure that they get addressed. Also, this session is being recorded. It will be posted back online within 24 hours of the conclusion of this session. So if you want to rewatch it and want to share it with folks, that is the best way to do so. So I'll go ahead first off and just kind of give you the overview. We're here to talk about member intelligence today. And member intelligence is really where different types of information come together. And it's a term that we've coined here because it's sort of the intersection of different data points. And that's what we want to talk about in today's session. But who's talking to you today? I will let Mark go ahead and introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark. I'm product manager for MetricsFirst. I've been at Jonas for a very long time there. You can see since 2006. Coming up on 15 years here. And I love my local sports teams, Toronto Raptors, Toronto Maple Leafs. They're not doing so well this year, at least not as of late. They're both on losing skids, unfortunately. And I like to do some city biking around, like I said, in Toronto. So that's me.
Yeah, that's Mark. For anybody who hasn't been on one of my sessions yet in the Thrive Conference, my name is Trevor Kuglin. I'm the Vice President of Marketing. I've also been with Jonas for forever and a day. I started in 2005, so I'll be coming up on my 16th year with the company this August. I'm an avid cyclist and runner. I'm currently training for a race that's much too long for me to participate in coming up this fall, but training's ticking along. And I've obviously been very lucky that I'm an avid cyclist and runner during COVID, because here in Toronto, we've had lots of shutdowns, and we've just recently gotten out of our last one. So it's I've been lucky that I enjoy getting outside to get my exercise in. So what I will do here is Mark's going to jump off of the actual video feed for right now, and I'll bring him back in when he is ready to jump into some metrics first. So Mark, you can say goodbye for right now, and I'll bring you back in 2 minutes. So a little bit about Jonas, just for anyone who doesn't know. We offer a pretty wide range of products to the club industry, all technology focused, obviously, starting with our back office systems, moving into website and mobile solutions, and then our value added here in the green. So value added, this one is really where we want to focus some of our efforts today, talking about MemberInsight and MetricsFirst. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the reason that we're really focusing on these two is because they deliver metrics in a bit of a different way, and metrics that sometimes get overlooked at clubs. The way that we really look at clubs from an overall technology perspective is that clubs are essentially a number of small businesses operating under a single roof, trying to deliver a certain standard of service excellence. You have one member that comes in and patronizes multiple businesses at one time, and that service experience needs to remain constant. So this is really the way that we look at developing technology, and the way that we look at reporting and metrics-based intelligence and things like that. We want to take a look at the entire club and the full member experience and help you optimize that member experience. So I guess the real question is here, and I've kind of mentioned it, what exactly is member intelligence? Well, analytics are not intelligence. It's one thing to look at numbers, look at data points, and confuse that with intelligence. But realistically, unless you have a clear idea of what to do with it or what that's really informing, it doesn't go very far. They're just numbers on a page. You know, a lot of people do confuse analytics with business intelligence, but it's nothing really without the context and the connection. So, for example, knowing how many members visited the club yesterday is kind of meaningless without the context of historical averages and the ability to cross-reference that data, the spending and other data points and like the service experience. So the real question is, how do we then define what business intelligence is all about? So the actual definition of business intelligence is the deriving of actionable insights from information collected. So, I mean, you can give me all the spreadsheets and analysis in the world, and it doesn't really make much difference without the understanding of what to do with the information. Knowing how many members visited the club, again, is great, but without the experience and the design behind that, what does it really tell you? So there are a lot of companies out there today relying on business intelligence and doing it in some really interesting ways. And I'd like to show you a couple of examples of exactly how companies are using it, just so you can get a better concept of really what's happening. So I don't know if anybody remembers Orbitz or if anybody's used it recently, but Orbitz was essentially a travel company and travel and booking company. In 2009, actually, this goes quite a ways back. In 2009, they launched a BI/machine learning team to try to better understand their market and the segments of their market and how people did online bookings. It was really interesting what they found. So in their research, they actually found that depending on the type of device and the type of operating system on the device, different people had tendencies to pay more or want to pay less for reservations. So much so that they actually found that Apple users searching for hotels would on average be willing to pay up to 30% more for their hotels than PC users. So this was just them looking at the data. And this is really where kind of business intelligence and analytics starts. When you look at the data, you see patterns and you see trends being defined. It's what they did with that that really became interesting. Now, they use that information. I bet you could probably guess how they use that information. I'm not accusing them of anything because I don't have any facts, but what I will do is show you a quick example of that thought process at work. So what you can see in front of you here is the exact same flight being looked at on the same website, the same time frame, same departure date, everything's exactly the same, but it's being looked at from two different devices. One of them is a PC and one of them is an iPad. And what you can clearly see here, and this is amazing, is that the exact same flight, depending on the device, is actually showing at a different price point. Now, this doesn't actually go in line with what Orbitz found back in 2009, but who says trends don't change, right? So it's a great example of the fact that there are companies out there using BI to really intelligently put information in front of you. I mentioned to Mark just before we hopped on the live stream, I had a discussion with my wife about a watch that I'd really like to buy. And I'm tossed up between one version versus the other that this company offers. So I asked her for her opinion on these two. I never even said the brand name, I don't think. But we talked about it for a minute or so. She told me which one she liked. Just this morning, she started receiving advertising for this watch brand within her Instagram feed. So you know that brands are paying attention to what we're doing. They're listening in every way, shape possible. So it is interesting to see these things actually coming into action through some of these examples, but it's happening all around us, and the pace at which companies are paying attention to these details is only accelerating. Just take a look at Starbucks, right? And Starbucks app program. So they actually track purchases using their loyalty card program, their mobile app. And then they use this information to target market specific products to individuals, already knowing what best appeals to the customer. So this is a great example of how BI and client relationship management systems work. So marketing automation, basically. The great example of this is with myself. So I'm a frequent Starbucks drinker. I love Starbucks coffee. And I used to drink it a lot more when I was commuting to and from the office every day. I guess they probably miss me. I would hope so. But when I drink Starbucks coffee, I like their drip coffee. I don't get an expensive, like fancy drink or anything. And I rarely get food items. What they do is they'll track my spending and purchase history, and they'll use that information to now target me for new ads and new promotions. So quite often on my commute to the office, I'd receive a promotional ad for me to try a new drink or to try adding a food item onto my next drink purchase. This is great business intelligence in action, because they're using this regular information that they're harvesting from my purchase behavior, and they're using it to try and upsell more products and services to me. American Express is another great example. So they use business intelligence to accurately predict which customers are likely to close their accounts. And they actually take action to retain these customers ahead of them leaving. So they do this by tracking spending habits, outstanding balances, overdue payments, things like that. And they can essentially develop a client score, a client risk score, to showcase how likely someone is to leave their product to go to another credit card company. And they actively intervene in this. So they're being proactive when it comes to business intelligence and dealing with attrition on their platform. But if you translate some of this into the club world, Derek Johnson, who's a partner at GGA Partners, he said to me, probably last year, he said, one of the biggest challenges that clubs face in their quest for better strategy is the sourcing, analysis, and visualization of important business intelligence. There's a lot to unpack in what he said there. But basically, data is everywhere. Gathering and interpreting the data and then providing the visualization of that data, giving yourself the action, the cues on that data, that's the difficult part. And that's where, this concept of big data is tough, right? Because there's a lot of information out there that clubs could be looking at to try to develop better intelligence overall. We've all heard this term of big data, but essentially it really boils down to lots of data points, and now analyzing those data points, and then putting it into a package where you can really make some good decisions based on it. The problem with this is many organizations take deep dives into financial information. They look at, they want to know where their revenues are, how their departments are performing, and those are all really, really important things to look at. But at the end of the day, this is a service business, and it's all about the members. And that's the one thing I find that quite often gets overlooked when people start talking about reporting and intelligence. It's the human factor, right? It's taking into account the behaviors of individuals at your club and the experiences that they're actually having. So this is where I believe that member intelligence really comes from. It is the combination of metrics like spending and utilization with opinion that give you true member intelligence. I'll give you a quick story, and I could probably be accused of telling this story too often, but I think it's a great example of how clubs can make use of this type of information. So a couple of years ago, a good friend of mine joined a private club. He's an avid golfer, and one of the main reasons he wanted to join this club was to really try to kind of grow his social network of golfers and enjoy the private club experience, the service that comes along with it, the exclusivity of play, and maybe get a little bit more competitive with his golfing and improve his game. So he joined the club and he began playing. He played roughly, I think, 2 to 3 times a week. He ate at the club every men's night, and he occasionally dined at the club on weekends with his wife. So this is the quiz for the group now. On paper, he played 3 times a week, used the practice facilities a couple times a week, participated in the weekly men's night, and he enjoyed the food at the club. Did he return in 2020 after having joined for the first time at the beginning of 2019? And the answer is no. And there was a number of factors for this. When I talked to him about it, he said that he was never asked about his experience by club management in terms of service experience or anything like that. The membership was a bit of an older demographic than he thought when he had joined the club. there were very few members that played after 2 p.m. So this is a guy that works, 9 to 5. Occasionally he'd get out a little bit early from work and he'd be on the course, maybe 3 p.m. But again, most of his golf was afternoons, evenings, and weekends. But that didn't really fit the mold of most of the golfers at the club. He had some poor service experiences. One of them included someone at the halfway house telling him that he had incorrectly written up a chit on a night when he just happened to be treating a couple of other friends to a round. And he found it to be kind of embarrassing. He commented to me, he said, this was something that easily could have been brought in to the member onboarding process, how to properly write up the chit, the short forms for it, the proper processes. He said, but instead I wasn't shown. And then I was, kind of embarrassed in front of my guests at the club. And I think most important, connections to other members were never really facilitated. There was really no onboarding process that helped him connect with the membership. So as much as he made an attempt to join play in the men's night, he got to know some of the folks at the club, the schedules and everything, it just all kind of worked against him. So despite the fact that if this club had been running their numbers and looking at his overall utilization of the club, on paper, he would have looked like an ideal member who was perfectly happy. But the club missed a big opportunity to really engage with him and find out what his experience was like. And as a result of it, he left. We're in a time of transition in the club industry right now where a lot of people have found over the course of the last year that working remote is something that they can do and they probably will be able to continue doing on an ongoing basis. Some studies are showing that anywhere between 25 and 30 million Americans are planning to relocate because of this. And what they're looking for is a better quality of life for them and their family. And in 2020, the other thing that happened to club's favor is that people really had a renewed interest in private club membership. And this is a great thing. But the really important thing that everyone needs to keep in mind is just because people are coming into your area, maybe they're new, they want to join a social club, it's a great opportunity to capitalize on this and bring new members on board. But what is a great new membership opportunity in a year or two's time could become a really big attrition issue. 80%, according to Golf Operator Magazine, 80% of club attrition in any given year is from members who have been members for less than 2 years. So you basically have a 1 to 2 year window to capitalize on that new membership and make sure that you're really doing the most to connect that new member. And especially in this time, if everything happening in 2020, there are so many reasons that this is a great opportunity for clubs to capitalize. Now, there's no doubt that things have been tough for city clubs, athletic clubs, and they continue to be. And hopefully we're nearing the end of that. But for any club out there that offers golf as a facility, 2020 turned out to be a really good year. I think the numbers were something like 50 million more rounds were played last year than in the previous year. So, there was a significant boom to the game because people wanted that sense of community. They wanted to get out and play. And some stats that GGA partners were responsible for putting together as well. Golf participation is up. The NGF had reported a 20% round increase in June and July of last year. It was since significantly higher than that. COVID spacing protocols created issues with access to the golf course, but a lot of clubs employed new technology and things to be able to help to kind of mediate some of those issues. Everyday golf and casual dining is increasing in importance. And of course, there's an increased scenario on scenario planning. So more sophisticated financial models to handle dynamic scenarios. So clubs are really turning to technology. And I think 2020 was a bit of a wake-up call for a lot of clubs to say, look, we really need to look at our information, at the data that's in our system. We need to better understand how people are utilizing our business and how they're going to be utilizing the business in the time to come. And again, this is where I really see that the concept of member intelligence comes in, the spending, the utilization, and the opinion. And so for all of these reasons, and again, I don't want to sound too ahead of ourselves, but we were a little bit ahead of the game with MetricsFirst and MemberInsight as platforms, because these two platforms were designed to do these exact things, designed to really help you utilize, better understand the data, to organize that data in easy to understand KPIs, and MemberInsight to automatically survey your membership, deliver the feedback and make it really easy for you to follow up on. So with this said, we're at the point now where I want us to talk about MetricsFirst, and I'm going to add Mark back in here because Mark is really, obviously, is the product manager for MetricsFirst. He's our in-house expert, and Mark is going to take us through a little bit about MetricsFirst right now for a few minutes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Trevor. Hi again, everybody. So what is MetricsFirst? Some of you may already know it is a reporting platform. It's not necessarily designed to replace your Jonas reporting. It's more to supplement it. It's cloud-based, which is great, which means you can access it from anywhere. You don't have to be at the club to get access to the reports. It's fantastic. We do connect to a few other vendors, especially where booking and reservation data is concerned. But most of the meat, most of the main KPIs, especially the ones we'll be highlighting today, do come from your Jonas system. What is that the system focus on? Its focus is primarily on membership utilization, top spenders, bottom spenders, looking at attrition and things of that nature. And so with that said, we'll jump into a little demo here. So in the system here, right now I'm on the home dashboard, and what the goal of the home dashboard is to just highlight what's happening at the club today. So again, utilizing those reservation systems, we pull in your bookings for today, and you can see there in that report in the top left corner, it's today's bookings. We have tea time bookings, dining reservations, hotel bookings. So whatever modules you're utilizing, especially if they're in Jonas, we can pull that data through and highlight that for you. And then utilizing that information, we try to take that a step further and highlight for you who's going to be expected at the club today, where they're going to be, and at what times they're going to be there. You can see tea times again there, dining, spa, fitness bookings, hotel. And then we try to take that information a step further. If we scroll back up just a little bit, we have a report there, members to meet. And that report is really highlighting the people who you want to try and have FaceTime with, or depending on your time that's available to you. So Trevor talked about that member who resigned after a year. Well, this report will highlight for you if it's a new member and they're expected to be at the club today, we highlight them. If it's their birthday and they're coming out today, we highlight them because that's an opportunity to not only wish them happy birthday, but maybe do something special for them. If they owe you some cash, they're 90 days overdue, we highlight those members as well. And then there's opportunities to also highlight VIPs there. And so I'll just jump into another report here. And this one is really utilization focused. So this is a really detailed view into all your members and their utilization within the last 12 months. So it starts off with some pretty standard information like their name and membership type, age. Then we get into tenure and even more interesting club visits. So that's where we pull in your booking information, and we also look at their discretionary spending. So a food purchase, merchandise, etc. And we utilize that information to determine if they visited the club and then give you a number within the last 12 months. And as we scroll over here, I'm just going to filter on something. So going back to Trevor's example of that member who resigned after a year, I'm going to filter this dashboard by my newer members. So I just chose a tenure of 1 year, but I can even select people who have been around for less than that. And now I can see the activity of my newer members. And so again, club visits, we have discretionary spending. We can see what their other department spends and bookings are like. And as we scroll over, there's an important or an interesting column here at the very end, social interactions. And what that one's doing is it's highlighting for you the number of unique members that they shared bookings with in the last 12 months. So although some of these members had been out to the club, around 20 times or so, you could see that second row there, that member had only interacted with 2 other people. So that's Caitlin, even though she'd been out to the club 20 times. So if we click on Caitlin's name, that will bring us to her individual dashboard where we can see more about her activity. We can see her monthly spending, how much of that was mandatory spending versus discretionary. If we continue to scroll down, we can see what items that she purchased. If we go further, we can see the social interactions and we can see the people they interacted with. So she brought out a guest once, interacted with 1 other member. So we scroll down, dining reservations, keep going, tea time bookings. And so now if you wanted to engage that new member, you have some more information to make that interaction even more informed. And whether you're looking at new members, top spenders, people who are at risk, you can always go into their individual dashboard to do a deeper dive. And so utilizing this type of information, particularly the spending and the club visits, we try to highlight for you members who may potentially be at risk. So Trevor talked about an example with Amex where they try to identify people who may be at risk and engage them before they jump ship or start looking to make a decision possibly to do something else. We're trying to do the same thing here. So we list out anyone who falls in the bottom 15 percentile of discretionary spending, change in spending in the last year compared to the year prior, club visits, and again, change in visits. And then also we look at your oldest members, so the top 5% in age. And so depending on the number of columns the member qualifies for, that will determine their risk score. So the first few members there, you can see they have a risk score of 4. So that's because they qualified for 4 out of the 5 categories. And so now we have a short list of people who may be potentially at risk that you can engage. And again, just like we saw with the other member there, Caitlin, we can click on their names, do a deeper dive into their individual dashboards before you reach out and engage those members, again, to make those conversations a lot more informed. So it's a very popular dashboard. We partnered with the GJ partners and they helped us produce this. So a very popular one. And so now I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about a revenue dashboard, very popular one here under food and beverage. It's called menu analysis. And it's not so much that we have your menu per se, but as we scroll down here, you'll see that we do have all of your sales categories and all of your sales items. And so in looking at these two reports, we can now see what categories and what items are our top sellers. And if I click on entrees on the left, that's going to filter my items. And now I'm looking at my top selling entrees. And I can reverse sort on any of these columns. So now I'm seeing my bottom sellers. So this dashboard is very popular for the chefs, F&B managers, or directors at the club to start doing a dive into your menu items. And so the burger is one of our top items, but it's probably at the top because it's offered all year round. Well, last month we had a special. Now I'm going to filter all these reports specifically by February 2021. So I just did on that report in the top left. And now I'm looking at my top sellers specifically in February. And now I can see the burgers is still up there, but I can also see my special was number 2. And how this ties into members, when I click on the special, I can see which members have purchased it. And if I reverse sort and look at my bottom selling items, and say the Turkey Club didn't do too well in Feb, again, I can click it. If I'm thinking about removing this item because it's not selling well, I can do a check to see which members have purchased it. In case there's a few people on there that really love it, maybe we send them a note to recommend something else, or depending on the members, maybe you don't remove it at all. And then one final check you can do is if we scroll down here, you can see the sales trend for that item over the years. And so we have this dashboard for F&B, but we also have a very similar one that goes club-wide. So it'll allow your golf pros or your fitness managers to do the same exercise just on another dashboard there. Very similar. And so, sorry, now I just jumped over to top spenders. And so this report is showing your top discretional spenders. And again, departmental managers can come in here and filter the top spenders by their department or their sales area. So I just clicked on dining room there. Now fitness, golf. And so all these reports here, they have email address in the background. You can download these reports. We'll download them to Excel. Email address is there. You can then import it into your email marketing program. So if you wanted to target, your top spenders, you have a promo, you really want to, send it out to a targeted list, a dashboard like this will help you do that. And if you speak to someone like me, we can even expose the email right on the screen so you can, highlight, copy, paste into Outlook, whatever program you're comfortable using to engage them. And so There's a ton of other dashboards in the system. Too many to talk about today, but you can see here I just jumped over to tea times. It will show you things like your tea time rounds by day of the week, tea time rounds by hour. Many of the dashboards you can filter by the membership type. And there's lots of other KPIs and really interesting information you can see in the system, which we'll be happy to talk about at the end when we're open for Q&A. So I'll turn it back over to Trevor to talk about MemberInsight.
Thanks very much, Mark. Great walkthrough, quick and concise, gives everybody an overview kind of what can be done. Tim, definitely not ignoring you. I just want to make sure that we get through the last section of our presentation here, and we'll loop back around on questions during our Q&A, but definitely a good question, and we'll come back around to you. Just a reminder for everybody, if you have any questions in regards to specific KPIs or anything like that with MetricsFirst or MemberInsight, by all means, throw your questions into the chat, and we will absolutely be looping back around to those during the Q&A at the end. So everything that Mark just showcased with MetricsFirst is really all about that data that exists within your system today. It's bringing in all of your booking information, spending information, your membership utilization, and it's really helping to give you a better picture of those types of metrics. The one thing that MetricsFirst really doesn't do, and no other system really does, is give you the member experience metrics. And what I mean by that is really, give you the feedback from members' opinions of how they've interpreted their service experiences. It would always be our hope at clubs that members would have fantastic service experiences, but obviously that doesn't always happen. So about 3 years ago, we launched a product called MemberInsight. And MemberInsight is really straightforward. It's a really simple, easy to use platform, web-based, just like MetricsFirst, that allows you to automatically send quick survey questions to your members after they've had a service experience at the club. So the way that this works is that if they come in and they have dinner in your main dining room, or they play golf, or they go to the golf shop to purchase some balls or tees or some merchandise, everything gets entered into your point of sale system and obviously tracked back against the member file in Jonas. Well, every time there's an open point of sale ticket or an update going back to your Jonas system, we know that you've had some kind of a member experience. We know that your member's been on site. And using the settings in the system, it can automatically send a quick survey to that member asking them to rate their service experience. This all gets tabulated in the platform and summarized, and you get an actual member score. There's a lot of different types of surveys that clubs produce, though, let's be honest. Probably the most popular is the annual member survey. In speaking with GGA partners, and they've been pretty instrumental in kind of the development of the thought process around MemberInsight as well, because they work with so many clubs all over the world, helping them both with short-term strategy around member satisfaction, as well as long-term strategy in terms of capital planning and things like that. And they really look at it as 3 different types of surveys that clubs need to be engaging their members with: long-term planning, periodic trending, and real-time feedback. So long-term planning and periodic trending, those are more traditional. Periodic trending is really your overall satisfaction. Long-term planning, capital planning, those are probably longer format surveys. They're going to go into greater detail. And you're going to ask some very specific, very strategic questions there. Periodic trending surveys, again, in terms of satisfaction, probably something that you want to be doing quarterly or maybe semi-annually. You probably don't want to wait to do it just a single time a year. And that's one of the reasons that we really developed MemberInsight, is because a lot of clubs were waiting a year to get that overall satisfaction rating. And as anybody knows, if you've ever had a bad experience with your cell phone company when you're debating a charge on a bill or anything like that, the most recent interaction that you've had will significantly influence the rating that you give at any given time. So a lot of times waiting a long period of time to really assess that overall satisfaction and how the service experiences were is not the best way to go. And that's where MemberInsight steps in. So daily, weekly feedback kind of idea, really helping you to keep the pulse on the overall satisfaction of your membership. The interesting thing is here, again, relating back to COVID, since the onset of the pandemic in March of 2020, the clients we have using MemberInsight have actually seen a 10% increase in the overall satisfaction and loyalty of their members. So there's a lot of kind of theory that goes into this. I think in large part, A lot of businesses may have been given a bit of leeway in 2020 because of the operational restrictions. So people were more willing to maybe forgive and forget certain things. But you know, it just goes to show that clubs are making tremendous efforts, and it's paying off with members. And we've actually got the data to prove it. So in terms of MemberInsight as a whole, what it really does. So it allows you to create and send automated surveys, collect member feedback. It automates the member follow-up. It creates automated to-do lists, and it allows you to actually benchmark your club and your different departments. So if you'll bear with me for a second here, I'm going to stop my screen share, and I am going to jump into the MemberInsight platform really quickly and give you a really quick walkthrough of what it looks like and how it works. So you should be able to see the MemberInsight platform now up on your screen. Let me just jump to it here on my screen so I can actually control it, move it around. Okay, so this is the MemberInsight dashboard. Really quickly, I'd like to give you a very fast rundown. So over here, you can actually see your benchmark. So as a whole, in the last 30 days, again, lots of filters up here. In the last 30 days, my club is scoring a 63. Or sorry, my club's scoring a 25, but the benchmark is 63. So what I can do is, because we have clubs on this platform from all over the world, is we can actually start to dig into this a little bit more. So I can look at different categories of clubs, I'll say private, and I can look at all types of clubs, because maybe if I'm a yacht club, I don't necessarily want to compare myself against, you know, city clubs. I'd like to compare it against yacht clubs. So if I look, my actual benchmark is changing here based on the different settings. This allows me as a business operator to really quickly and easily understand, is my business performing up to the level of clubs like mine elsewhere in the world? We can even get more specific in terms of geography, but obviously we never do it in a way that anyone would be able to hone in on a specific club. We keep all that data very, very quiet, very behind the scenes. Right here, you can see star performers at your club as well, and this is your star members that are seeing the most positive increase in their overall loyalty. So basically, people who have been surveyed multiple times, the increase in their Net Promoter Score. Now, the Net Promoter Score is what we use in the MemberInsight platform to determine overall loyalty and satisfaction. And it's built on a lot of science, not something we developed. It was developed by a company called Bain. They put a lot of research into it and basically came up with this theory that a single question is really all you need to assess loyalty and satisfaction. And it's the would you recommend question. Now, I know in the private club world, we don't always think of making recommendations, but it's not that far-fetched when you think of one member recommending something to another member. And that's really the way that we kind of like to phrase it. Would you recommend X to another member? And when I say X, the level of detail that we can get to in this system is actually right down to your different departments. So if I take a look at all of my departmental surveys at my club, what we do with MemberInsight is we actually create different departments for each one of your functional business areas. So now you can have a business area for your golf shop, your main dining room, your grill room, your snack bar, your golf course itself. And when your members have service experiences in each of these areas, they can be independently surveyed on how that service experience was, thereby giving you the ability to dive in and look at the overall performance of these different business areas. So here I'm just looking at my golf course, which has a 17 NPS. My golf shop, though, has a 95. So obviously, the experience that my members are getting at the golf shop with the staff there is better than the experience that they're getting on the actual course. So the system allows you to really start to dive into some of these things. Really quickly, you can look at kind of what the buzz is. Staff and service in greens, obviously two of the things that members are talking about in their service survey responses. And then really quick metrics on response rate and things like that. So I'd like to show you the actual surveys themselves, and I'll show you really quickly what it looks like. But basically, my golf course, I'll dive into this department. Our surveys are really quick to set up. So based on your visit yesterday, how likely are you to recommend the actual department, which is inherited from my Jonas system, to friends and family, someone you know, a colleague or other? This gives us the ability to customize this. So I'm just going to say another member. If we scroll down here, this is what the email would actually look like when your members received it. Comes to their email, they can quickly and easily choose a rating. Once they've chosen that rating, they then have the ability to submit a comment as to why they gave you that rating. We switched over to the NPS survey system about 2 years ago at Jonas for all of our client surveys. What we've seen is a significant increase in the response rate and the actual quality of the surveys that come back. And I think it's because whether you're at the low end or the high end of this spectrum, you're probably, somewhat incentivized by the most recent service experience to provide a specific reason why you feel strongly in either direction or the other. So when I look at the survey responses coming back into Jonas, I can tell you they're very specific. And it allows us to get specific with our clients through an open-ended question where they can give us the most pressing issue that's on their mind or the most pressing comment. I find it's really good because a lot of times with surveys, you try and lead people to give you certain responses or response types. An open-ended question just gives people the opportunity to reply with what's really on their mind. The other great thing is that if you're looking at long-form surveys and things like that, you can build out long-form surveys in the system just like you would with SurveyMonkey or any other tool. You can come in here, drag and drop your questions around. You've got all kinds of different question types. So for a club that's looking for a full survey solution, not just to do the service experience follow-ups, we do offer the functionality there as well. But I want to showcase what I think the real power of MemberInsight is, and that's in the activity. So when a member fills out a survey, yes, I'd like to leave. When a member fills out a survey, all the survey responses come right back in here to the system. And you can see here what I've actually done is I still have my filtering on and I'm looking at my Red Oaks Golf Club because you can set up multiple clubs under this. And I'm looking at the golf shop. And I am looking at the survey responses that are coming in. So I've had 84 survey responses that are tied directly to the golf shop and are giving my golf shop a 95 NPS score. Again, 95 is very, very high. The NPS rating is on a scale of 100. The great thing is here is now I can actually see specific responses from my members, good, bad, in between. And I can see the comments. Having a club fit has made such a difference to my game. I've told all my friends to do the same. This is the type of thing that really drives action. But I can also filter this down and I can look at detractors. Now, lucky for me, I don't have any detractors at my golf club. So let me just go to all survey types for the club. And here we have a couple. So this person feels that the gym is lacking equipment, so they wouldn't likely be recommending us. Or play was very slow. The round took over 5 hours. This is the true power of MemberInsight. And one of the reasons I love this platform so much is because at a glance, I can look at all of my survey responses. I can filter down to the ones that I think are most important for me to get back to. And then I can actually follow up directly within the system. Even better than this is you can direct survey responses below a certain threshold. So let's say your negative ones that are considered to be 6 or below, you can filter them to the departmental managers responsible for that area of the business. So any survey responses that come in regarding my main dining room, I can automatically have those routed over and put on the to-do list of my food and beverage manager or of my golf professional or the director of fitness. So again, as you can see here, if I was the golf shop manager, I would be able to have this automatically come into my personal to-do list. And from here, I can make notes on the fact that I've either followed up with Chris and had a conversation, talked to him in passing, or I can even email him directly from the system. This opens my Outlook with a BCC link. And once I've emailed him, that email, the body that I type to him will actually be copied back in. So not only does this give you full oversight of the communications that your staff are having with your membership, it gives you accountability to the fact that your members are being followed up with, and it really easily collects this information and puts it all into one area. Now, one of the questions we get asked quite often, and you can see here all of my history for this particular member. One of the questions we get asked quite often is how often will my members receive surveys? All of that's completely customizable. So I can have it set up that no member receives a survey more often than once every 2 weeks and not from the same department more than once a month. So there's all kinds of thresholds that I can have in place here. And then I can have all of my different staff have different access levels to the system so that they can just see what's applicable to them in their department and they're not looking and kind of, we don't want to breed any type of competitive nature amongst the different departments at your club, but we want to make sure that your staff have access to all the information that they really need. To me, this is the real power of the system. One of the great things as well that I love are these little tags. And this gives me the ability to dive in. I can say that these tags, which are pulled out of the actual response, is a positive, a negative, and then I can search based on specific tags. This feeds intelligent business decisions in my mind, because if I'm having a lot of issues with one area of my business, it's going to be mentioned time and time again in member responses to these surveys. So I can quickly pull these up and get an overall impression of what's happening. And in fact, if I take a look back at my dashboard, I think I can see here that the parking tag was mentioned enough times so that it is kind of in our red area. And I'm seeing here that parking is maybe a bit of a concern for me and my club and something that needs to be addressed. So again, lots of different data points here with MemberInsight, but the real power of it is automating these surveys so that you don't have to be sitting there clicking the button. It goes to your members instantly after they've had a service experience, and their response comes back into the system immediately as well, giving you, the management team at clubs, the ability maybe even to intervene with a member before they've left site. Obviously, if I'm a member and I get the survey response on my phone while I'm still sitting there, just about ready to leave from having dinner, I've had a really bad experience, I get a negative rating, that'll alert maybe your general manager or the department manager immediately, and they can then run interference on that member. So it gives you the ability to take immediate action on survey follow-up and your members' experiences. And I mean, something that we always like to say here, it's what happens after the survey that really matters, right? It's the action that you take from that response. So that's my overall summary of MemberInsight. So what I'm going to do is I will jump out here. We're through this, and we can hop over to the Q&A. I'll add Mark back into the stream, and I will reshare my screen. Nope, wrong one. Jumping back and forth between this many screens is often can be quite fun when you're trying to navigate and find the right one to be sharing. So that was our walkthrough of MemberInsight. So in terms of this, that's the formal part of the presentation. So I know we do have a couple of questions that have popped up into the chat. I'll go through them in chronological order. I know Phyllis, you mentioned you joined late. Yes, this session is being recorded. It'll be up and available within 24 hours of the conclusion here. Tim threw this question in when we were in the middle of walking through MetricsFirst. So I guess, Tim, what you're really asking here is what kind of changes we've seen or we've implemented in MetricsFirst in the last 12 months because of the impact of COVID. I'll throw it to Mark here in a second, but I guess just from a real high level perspective, I guess my thought on this is instead of us actually implementing a lot of changes, I think what has happened is that there's been a change in our clients in the way that they're looking at the data. And that's probably the single biggest change, is that people have always had access to this information, but now they're looking at it in different ways, and they're extrapolating different, I guess, different lessons from it that can help them operate in kind of COVID-focused times. So things like looking at what members have been on site over a course of over a period of time, looking at how busy the club is going to be on any given day, looking at the size of events that are coming up, major milestones, just all these different things. I think people are really looking at these data points in different ways than they have in the past, and that's probably the thing that's changed the most. Mark, I'll let you comment, but I don't think that we've had that many COVID-specific KPI requests with MetricsFirst. I think it's more so been people asking how they can see certain information that maybe they didn't know was already available.
Yeah, I would agree. And the system does allow you to, depending on the reports you're looking at, some have a little bit of a fixed window, but there are many reports and dashboards that will let you, let's say, choose 2 years back. And now you can see, okay, what do my tea time rounds look like 2 years ago compared to this year? And same thing goes for the revenue dashboard. So it really just depends on the dashboard and the report you're looking at. Will allow you to have a view pre-COVID and, obviously within the last year as well at the same time.
Exactly. So thank you very much, Tim, for that question. By all means, folks, if there's more questions, throw them in. We're a little light on questions today. I'll jump to Melissa's question here, which I think is a great one. So for MemberInsight, is it pulling from Jonas Activity Management alone, or would it send a dining survey because a chip was recorded for them? So great question, Melissa. So the answer is yes. It's pulling from more than just Jonas Activity Management. When we first built the system, what we did is we looked at anytime a point of sale chit is created for a member as being able to record that service experience. But obviously there are scenarios outside of that. So we went back and we did some more development on the platform. And one of those areas specifically we wanted to address were when members were checked in on the tee sheet for a round of golf, because we wanted to make sure that we were actually capturing experiences at the golf shop separately from people who are just being checked in to play a round of golf. You can check players in for a round of golf with or without a chip being created in point of sale. So that's why we wanted to make sure that that was covered. But from that perspective, basically anytime a member has a service experience at the club, typically speaking, a record of it is created, and then it pulls directly into the system. And that's primarily what we use for sending out those automated surveys. So thank you very much, Tim and Melissa, for the questions. Mark, it looks like we've answered everybody's questions ahead of them having to ask them. So that's, kudos to us. But I guess if we don't have any more questions, I just want to thank everyone for hopping on here today. We've got another 1 or 2 sessions coming up later today that will end our Thrive 2021 conference. So on behalf of myself and everyone at Jonas, we really appreciate you joining us for our first virtual conference. This is my last presentation of the conference, which is why this sounds like I'm closing it out. But I want to thank everyone for joining us, and especially on the session today, and wish you all the best. So you've got a few extra minutes to grab a drink, maybe catch up on some emails before that next session of Thrive 2021. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.